Despite Democrats' best efforts this week, Amy Coney Barrett became our newest Supreme Court justice. Joining me now is the president of the Judicial Crisis Network and expert on all things Supreme Court, Carrie Severino. Carrie, thank you for joining us. So the ACB appointment, why is that so important to conservatives?
Well, for so long, we have had Republican nominees who have not, in fact, been faithful to the Constitution and the rule of law. Some of the most liberal justices in American history, in fact, Earl Warren himself, like the Chief Justice, who presided over the most liberal court probably in American history, appointed by Republicans. And so this really is kind of the crowning glory of the progress the conservative legal movement has made. And also, I've got to say, President Trump's real insight into the fact that it is absolutely a central role of the president to make judicial appointments and to make bold ones. A lot of people, in previous administrations, someone like Amy Coney Barrett wouldn't have even been considered because her views were so clear. The idea was you had to find someone who kind of maybe was secretly an originalist but wasn't actually talking about it, or things like that. She's someone who's just out there and says, this is who I am and this is my approach, and that's the principled approach. And it's so exciting to see her. And
right prior to Amy Coney Barrett's appointment, when Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still alive on the bench, it was a 5-4 conservative lean. But as you point out, so many judges, Chief Justice Roberts, in fact, was one of them who's not necessarily a conservative. He couldn't be counted on to vote with a conservative POV all the time. So this appointment makes it a 6-3, which really kind of may be a 5-4. Am I right?
Well, I think that time will tell on that. It could be that the Chief Justice, having that sort of burden of everyone telling him, you're the swing vote, you're the defense of the integrity of the court, and the legitimacy of the courts in your hands. And of course, we know that when the liberal media says that, what they mean is vote our way or we're going to all claim that you're illegitimate. Now that's off his shoulders. Now I hope that he can return to what previously, before things started going crazy with the Obamacare decision, was more of his pattern, which was he's not a declared originalist, but he was much more consistent in terms of looking at what the law actually said.
Carrie, this show will air just days prior to the election. If this thing goes on and on and on, tell us the process that the Supreme Court could get involved in deciding who actually won the election.
Yeah, unfortunately, anytime the elections are close, we have a lot of litigation that follows that. And if it's close enough in the right places, you could end up with a Bush versus Gore type scenario. The left's already worried about that. They're trying to claim falsely that she would need to recuse herself in that case. That's simply never been the standard. You've got everyone, Kagan and Sotomayor, they sat on election-related disputes that had to do with Obama, who nominated them. Similarly, for Ginsburg and Breyer, they sat in disputes involving President Clinton, who nominated them. That's never been the standard. But we could see the court, and they're already going into the election having to weigh in because we have a lot of last-minute attempts to change rules in the middle of an election, basically, as to how
can I stop you on there right there? Because this went to the Pennsylvania issue went to the Supreme Court. It got pushed back. So Pennsylvania got 3 additional days to count ballots. So this could actually happen in other states if things are real tight. States could petition to get more time to count the ballots to find out who won, say, North Carolina. I think they asked for additional time. Or a big important state like Florida, for example. How does that process work, and how does the Supreme Court how does it end up at the court?
Well, they would work their way up in the federal courts. There'd be a trial court and then an appeals court that would get to weigh in, and then the Supreme Court. In cases like this, though, you might have them petitioning directly to the Supreme Court itself, because obviously there would not be a lot of time to go through that process. In those situations, the court often, and has done so in these cases, they don't hear oral arguments. They just issue a quick opinion. Sometimes you don't even get all the justices explicitly weighing in. But some of the recent ones, we saw Justice Kavanaugh, I think, had a great opinion explaining some of the importance of the court shouldn't be endorsing last-minute changes. We need to have deadlines in elections so we understand and the process is consistent for both sides. And he cautioned against courts jumping in and second-guessing the legislature. So sometimes it's a legislature that's changing the rules, and that's one thing. But when you have a court at the last minute substituting its policy judgment for how the legislature decided to deal with COVID or to deal with an election, that's something that's even more of a concern and can lead to real questions about legitimacy going at the end of an election.
So I do the math, and I've done the math for presidential elections, probably 4 or 5 cycles. There is a path where North Carolina could be the deciding state in the election. Now, North Carolina has asked for 9 additional days. At some point, could either the Trump administration or the Biden camp say, Supreme Court declare a winner? Is that a possibility?
Well, I think what would be more would happen is they would declare whether whatever lower court issued an injunction saying they could or they couldn't have those extra days to count was going to do it. It's not the court saying we like Biden, we like Trump. That would be very similar potentially to Bush versus Gore, where what was happening is Florida was changing its own rules, recounting these jurisdictions and recounting them in inconsistent ways. And that was ultimately when the court had to step in and say, no, you can't just pick and choose and recount certain districts and not do others. And so when they said stop recounting, it effectively, had the effect of saying, okay, Bush was ahead at that point, he won. But we have to remember, it's the court is making this based on legal questions. Those legal questions could go, one way if it's a Democrat asking for the thing, another way if it's Republicans. We hope that what they should be doing is looking at the legal standards of how a court should be trying to govern these things, and not themselves choosing.
All right. After the election, we'll bring you back and we'll talk about what the future arguments that the court may be hearing going forward and how that may change life in America. Again, Supreme Court, one of the most important things a president can do, appoint the Supreme Court justice. Carrie Severino, thank you for your time.
Thanks, Aaron.